When Fernando Alonso calls a driver he has raced wheel to wheel with a legend of the sport, you know you're dealing with a formidable competitor. The subject of his praise, Robert Kubica, will forever be a tantalising F1 what if. He was once destined for Formula 1 glory, but instead his story became one of promise unfulfilled thanks to that fateful moment on February the 6th, 2011 when he crashed a Skoda Fabia on the Ronda di Andorra rally in Italy. The crash was gruesome. A barrier sliced through the car, giving Kubica right leg and arm injuries and changing the course of his life and career. Rather than a tale of World Championship glory, it became one of the triumph of human determination, culminating in the twin peaks of a return to F1 that once seemed impossible, and then victory in the Le Mans 24 Hours in 2025. F1 history is littered with drivers who would or should have gone on to win World Championships, but for some twist or turn of fate. But they can't all have done. Therefore, it's legitimate to ask, was Kubica really that good? Despite topping the first pre-season test at Valencia in 2011, a few days before his rally crash, Kubica's F1 season for Renault would have been a tough one. The Renault R31, with its innovative forward-facing exhausts, produced good initial performances but did not respond to upgrades. Kubica would have grabbed some decent initial results in a car that took 2 podiums early on in the hands of Vitaly Petrov and replacement Nick Heidfeld, but it soon faded to a distant 5th best. Had Kubica stayed with the team as it was renamed Lotus in 2012, there likely would have been wins, perhaps more than the one the returning Kimi Raikkonen managed. But Kubica already had a Ferrari pre-contract. That was reported at the time and also alluded to by then Ferrari team principal Stefano Domenicali, who confirmed in 2013 the team had been keeping an eye on Kubica. Kubica also confirmed many years later that such a deal was in place, but given Ferrari's ups and downs in the middle years of the 2010s, it's difficult to predict exactly what he would have achieved. What it does prove is how steep an upward trajectory he was on. Kubica built a good reputation with his karting exploits, where he was a contemporary and equal of both Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, and in junior single-seaters with race wins in Formula Renault and Formula 3. His breakthrough victory in the F3 Euro Series came after a delayed start to the season after sustaining multiple fractures in his right arm after an accident as a road car passenger. He also took pole position and finished second in the Macau Grand Prix in 2004, but it wasn't until he moved up to the Renault World Series in 2005, at the time broadly a GP2 equivalent but with a lower profile, that he won a championship. That led to the prize of a first F1 test in the championship-winning Renault R25 in Barcelona in December 2005. Renault wasn't interested in his services, but the same month he was signed as reserve driver by BMW-Sauber. Team principal Mario Tyson referred to Kubica's impressive performances, crucially without major financial support. This deal gave Kubica Friday mileage on every Grand Prix weekend. His pulverising pace in those outings during 2006 meant he forced his way into a race seat at 1997 world champion Jacques Villeneuve's expense. In a car with a touch of understeer, Kubica could carry phenomenal entry speed on the grippy Michelins and get the car to respond well enough to give the required rotation. It was similar to Alonso's distinctive style in that era of cars on Michelins, at times perhaps even more impressive. Kubica finished 7th on the road on debut in Hungary, although he was subsequently disqualified for the car being underweight. A first podium finish followed at Monza on his 3rd outing, and although that was his only real points finish in 6 outings, he'd done more than enough to earn a full season with the team in 2007. The following year was a more troubled one, with tyre competition eliminated by Michelin's departure and the resulting switch to Bridgestone rubber. That meant a more oversteery balance, making it difficult for Kubica to do his best work. The 2007 season was not so impressive as a result, managing 39 points compared to teammate Heidfeld's 61, although Kubica sat out the United States Grand Prix thanks to sustaining a concussion in his monster Canada crash. There, he hit the wall on the approach to the hairpin at 230 km per hour, a 75G impact. But Kubica returned to form, and then some, in 2008. The BMW-Sauber F108 was a strong car, and with Bridgestone tyres tending more towards understeer, Kubica comprehensively outperformed teammate Nick Heidfeld. Some, including my colleague Mark Hughes, rated him as the best driver of the season.
Yeah, I did rate him the number 1 in 2008. I think when you look at that championship, it was the battle between Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa ultimately, but they both made far many more mistakes than Robert, and that was one of Robert's course. Not only was he dynamite fast. He was just so good at just delivering without error. And he came in, he'd been the test driver at Sauber BMW and was doing times, even though you got the extra engine, the extra tyres as the third driver. They knew what that offset was, and they were looking at the data and saying, this guy is sensational. And sure enough, Monza's on the podium. And that's why they were so relaxed about letting Sebastian Vettel go, and that took a love between them and Red Bull, because as far as they were concerned, when they look at all the data, Robert was a couple of tenths at least faster than Seb, so they didn't have that big a deal. So he was so good at taking huge speed into the corner, especially on the tyre war Michelins that the BMW-Sauber was on at that time. And that car that he led the championship with after his win in Canada, no way was that on the same level as the McLaren or the Ferrari. It was a K car, but it was at best a distant third. But he just put the results together and just kept banging them in. And when they switched to the other tyres, it wasn't as his talent needed some adaptation to get around the new tyres, but he was still capable of doing stunning performances, and the 2009 BMW was hopeless. And he would quite conceivably have won the Australian Grand Prix with that car. It was only a collision late in the race that prevented him from going past Vettel and then taking Button for the victory, and that was just a clash with Seb, one of those 50-50 racing incidents. He had the thing in second place in Brazil. He could do things beyond what the others did. And it was the driver that Fernando Alonso repeatedly said, no, he is the best of us all. That is the level that he was at.
The 2008 campaign is best remembered for Kubica's frustration. He believes BMW felt it was job done, and as the season progressed decided to focus more on improving Heidfeld's performances, the consequence of hitting the corporate schedule by winning, through Kubica leading a 1-2 in Canada. Kubica argues there were upgrades that could have been brought to the car that were not, and to this day he angrily resents BMW preventing him from going for the championship by not pushing on as it should have done with developing the car. The Montreal win was Kubica's crowning glory in F1, coming a year after his massive accident there, but was not his best performance of the season. That honour perhaps goes to his second place after leading early on at Fuji in a car that was no longer as competitive as it previously was. BMW expected 2009 to be its title-winning year, and channelled the resources Kubica believes could have made him champion in 2008 into it, but it proved disastrous. The introduction of KERS, something BMW stood in the way of F1 postponing, was a big part of the problem. It meant the car was overweight, with packaging compromised, partly because of the placement of the air-cooled batteries, with head of engineering Willy Rampf admitting we underestimated the complications and impact they had on the car. KERS was dropped early in the season, but many of the compromises remained. The wider front wings also created aero problems, and there was also no double diffuser, an innovation team principal Mario Tyson blames for BMW's 2009 failure. Kubica did what he could, producing some startling performances, with second place in Brazil the highlight. His points helped BMW to salvage 6th in the championship. BMW pulling the plug on F1 forced a move to another team, but despite interest from Williams, Kubica opted to return to Renault. Renault's way of doing things chimed with Kubica, and it was a good fit with his demanding personality. While the Renault R30 of 2010 was a tidy car, Kubica played a big role in improving it by pushing for power steering and braking changes early on to ensure he got the stability, the feel and the level of responsiveness he needed for his trademark corner entry speed. His performances elevated a good but not great car into one that could fight for podium finishes. The result was an outstanding season. Monaco, where he qualified second and finished third, was particularly memorable, even though Kubica himself said, "I was massively helped by the car there. It was very friendly, very easy to predict." He characterised the R30 as not the fastest, but probably the easiest car he experienced in F1, and that gave him the freedom to drive as he wanted. At Suzuka, he qualified third with floor damage that cost rear downforce, one of the most remarkable Saturday performances of recent memory. Unfortunately, his race came to an end early on when a wheel nut worked loose. It was a strong season, and the hopes were that in 2011, Renault and Kubica might be a title contender. Sadly, that wasn't to be the case, and instead his life took a very different turn.
Ok, via. Mi hai fatto male? Sei fatto male. Porco Ok. Fermati lì. No, non lo so. Sapevo io che la tirava lì.
Formula One driver Robert Kubica has been seriously injured in a rally crash just 2 weeks out from the start of the new season.
I tak naprawdę tragedia jest gotowa. Nigdy tak naprawdę nie zabezpieczymy się na tyle.
Fighting to save Formula One driver Robert Kubica's hand after he was involved in a high-speed rally crash. The Polish driver was also left with serious...
Nie ucierpiał. Tu widzimy dokładnie to miejsce, przez które przebiła się ta bariera.
Było zdrowie, niektórzy nawet życie właśnie przez drobiazgi, ale to one są czasami decydujące. Na tyle dobre są informacje, że przynajmniej stan Roberta jest stabilny, no i trzymamy kciuki. Mamy nadzieję, że operacja przejdzie jak najbardziej pozytywnie i wróci na tor, na trasę.
After the rally crash that altered the course of Kubica's life, the road back to F1 was a long and challenging one. However, Kubica returned to competition in rallying in September 2012, 19 months after his accident, and won the Ronda Gomitolo di Lana Rally in a Subaru Impreza WRC. Initially, he focused on the World Rally Championship, winning the WRC2 title in 2013, then competing full-time in the top class in a Fiesta in 2014 and 15, with a best finish of 6th. But he still craved a return to F1. To that end, he made his circuit racing return in the Mugello 12 Hours in March 2016. A Renault F1 test followed in 2017, initially in a 2012 car, before he ran in the up-to-date car in the Hungaroring test later that year. That was to evaluate him as a potential candidate for a 2018 drive. Despite showing promising initial pace, Renault ultimately had doubts about his outright speed and moved for Carlos Sainz during the 17 season. Kubica was then tried out by Williams and became its reserve driver in 2018, making 3 FP1 outings that year ahead of his promotion to a full-time race seat in 2019. It was remarkable Kubica could perform at the level he did. He always downplayed the effect of his injuries, but even his admission that he was driving around 70% left-handed seemed to underestimate the extent of the limitation. It was a catastrophic season for Williams, with a car that was not ready for the start of pre-season testing thanks to build problems, had some illegal parts that had to be changed before the first race, and proved to be woefully slow. Kubica managed a point for 10th at Hockenheim, but was comprehensively outperformed by rookie teammate George Russell. While Kubica had his moments and argues his campaign was better than it looked, ultimately it was clear he was not the driver he once was. The same applies for his final 2 outings in 2021 as a stand-in for Kimi Raikkonen during his stint as Sauber reserve driver. But considering the extent of his life-changing injuries, it's astonishing that he had the determination and skill to come back and be a competent F1 driver. His challenge was unique. He underwent regular surgeries to get his right arm back into a condition where he could drive, battled through the mental anguish of a character born to race being on the sidelines, and managed to make a comeback that would be beyond most. In many ways, that's an achievement greater than winning the World Championship. He's gone on to win 2 European Le Mans Series championships and the Le Mans 24 Hours, also an astonishing achievement given his limitations. Again, that's testament to how good he not only was, but still is. The level of respect for Kubica in the Grand Prix paddock remains high among those who raced against or worked with the pole, who is the great what-if story of the 21st century. Did what happened on that fateful Sunday during the Ronda di Andorra rally in February 2011 cost F1 a world champion? Very possibly. Despite superficially unremarkable statistics, Kubica showed enough during his 4 full seasons in F1 before the crash that changed his life to prove that he would certainly have won races with Ferrari. As for the World Championship, there's no doubt he was capable of it, but given Ferrari hasn't won a title since 2008, it's hardly a foregone conclusion. If he hadn't, where the next step might have taken him is impossible to say. But more important than the might have beens is what Kubica, the original version, achieved in F1. His speed on track and relentless drive off it, a quality that still characterises the way he works with teams in sports cars to this day, made him a formidable package. While we can't say for certain he would have won world championships, there's overwhelming evidence to say he was capable of doing so. He really was that good, and that's why Alonso calls him a legend.